He was the gentle one. Opening hook. The barn door slammed shut behind Wade as he stormed out, his breath coming in ragged gasps, his shirt still half unbuttoned. I stood frozen in the doorway, my hands trembling, unable to process what had just happened between us. That's when I heard the slow, deliberate footsteps behind me, boots on wood, heavy and cert. I turned to find Marcus, Wade's older brother, leaning against the stable wall with his massive arms crossed, his eyes dark and unreadable in the dim light. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a blade. "He was the gentle one, kid. You sure you can handle what comes next?" I'd been working at the Holloway Ranch for 3 months when everything changed. My name is Dylan Carter, and at 22 I thought I had my life figured out, or at least the next chapter of it. After dropping out of college and drifting through a series of dead-end jobs in the city, I'd answered an ad for stable work in rural Montana. The pay was decent, the work was honest, and most importantly, it was far away from the life I'd been trying to escape. The Holloway Ranch sprawled across 1,500 acres of grassland and forest, nestled against the foothills of the Rockies. The main house was a sprawling log structure that looked like something out of an old Western film, all rough-hewn timber and stone chimneys. The stables where I worked were newer but built in the same rustic style, housing 20 horses and smelling perpetually of hay, leather, and horse sweat. I lived in a small cabin on the property, nothing fancy, just a bedroom, a bathroom, and a kitchenette, but it was mine and that mattered. The work was hard, physical labor that left me exhausted but satisfied at the end of each day. Mucking stalls, feeding horses, mending fences, exercising the animals, it was a world away from my previous life, and I was grateful for the distance. The Holloway family consisted of 3 brothers who'd inherited the ranch from their father 5 years earlier. Marcus was the eldest at 32, a mountain of a man who stood 6'4" and had shoulders that seemed to fill doorways. He was quiet, intense, and ran the business side of the ranch with an iron will. Wade, the middle brother at 28, was my direct supervisor and the one I worked with most closely. And then there was Jesse, the youngest at 24, who handled the breeding program and spent most of his time in the far pastures. From my first day, Wade had been different from what I'd expected. Where Marcus was all hard edges and stern commands, Wade was patient, almost gentle in the way he taught me the routines of stable work. He had sandy brown hair that always seemed to fall into his blue eyes and a quiet smile that appeared slowly, like sunrise creeping over the mountains. "Don't worry about Marcus," Wade had told me on my second day after his older brother had barked at me for leaving a gate unsecured. "He's just protective of this place. Once you prove yourself, he'll ease up." I nodded, still intimidated by the sheer presence of the eldest Holloway brother. "And you, should I worry about proving myself to you?" Wade had looked at me then, really looked at me, and something flickered in his expression that I couldn't quite name. "You've already proven yourself to me," he said quietly. "Anyone willing to learn and work hard is good in my book." That was the beginning. Over the following weeks, Wade and I fell into an easy rhythm. We'd start each morning at dawn, working through the feeding schedule together, our conversation flowing as naturally as the work. He taught me about each horse's personality, their quirks and preferences. He showed me how to read their moods, how to handle the difficult ones, how to earn their trust. But it wasn't just about horses. During lunch breaks, we'd sit on the corral fence and talk about everything else: music, books, the places we traveled or wanted to travel. I learned that Wade had spent 2 years after high school working on ranches across Wyoming and Colorado before coming home when his father got sick, that he loved old country music and bad action movies, that he'd once dreamed of being a veterinarian before family obligations redirected his path. I found myself looking forward to these conversations more than anything else in my day. There was something about Wade that put me at ease, that made me want to share parts of myself I usually kept hidden. I told him about my failed attempt at college, about feeling lost and directionless in my early 20s, about my parents' disappointment when I'd left school. "Sometimes the path we're supposed to take isn't the one everyone expects," Wade had said, his shoulder brushing against mine as we sat on that fence. Took me a while to learn that. The physical awareness had started so gradually that I couldn't pinpoint exactly when it began. Maybe it was the day Wade had steadied me when I nearly fell off a ladder in the tack room, his hands warm and firm on my waist. Maybe it was the morning I'd caught him watching me work with one of the younger horses, an expression on his face that was almost tender. Or maybe it was all the small moments in between, the accidental touches, the lingering eye contact, the way my heart rate picked up whenever he smiled at me. I'd known I was gay since I was 15, but I'd learned early to keep that part of myself locked away. Growing up in a conservative small town had taught me that much. Even in the city, I'd been cautious, never fully out, never fully free. The ranch felt like neutral territory, a place where I could just exist without labels or expectations. But Wade was making that neutrality impossible. Every day I was more aware of him, the way his jeans hugged his hips, the strength in his forearms when he lifted bales of hay, the rare but devastating smile that transformed his entire face. I found myself stealing glances when I thought he wasn't looking, my imagination wandering to dangerous territory during the long, quiet hours of stable work. I told myself it was just a crush, just loneliness and proximity creating something that wasn't really there. Wade was my boss, my friend, and most likely straight. Nothing good could come from these feelings. Everything changed on a Thursday in late September. The autumn air had turned crisp, and we were preparing the horses for the coming winter, checking their coats, adjusting feed schedules, making sure the stable heating system was functioning properly. Wade and I had been working in comfortable silence most of the afternoon when he suddenly spoke. "You got plans for Saturday night?" I looked up from the bridle I was cleaning, surprised. "No, why?" "There's a bonfire thing down by the river. Some of the neighboring ranchers, their families and workers, happens every year before it gets too cold." Wade wasn't looking at me, focused intently on the saddle he was conditioning. "Thought maybe you'd want to come, get to know some folks around here." "Yeah, sure, sounds nice." He nodded, and I could have sworn I saw relief flash across his features. "Good, I'll pick you up around 7. Saturday came with a nervousness I couldn't quite shake. I changed clothes 3 times in my small cabin, finally settling on jeans and a flannel shirt that wasn't too new or too worn. When Wade's truck pulled up outside at 7 sharp, my stomach did a strange flip. He'd cleaned up 2 fresh jeans, a dark blue shirt that made his eyes even more striking, his hair still damp from a shower. He smiled when I climbed into the truck, and I noticed he smelled like cedar and something clean, masculine. "You clean up nice, city boy," he said, his tone teasing but warm. "You're one to talk, country boy," I shot back, and he laughed, a real, genuine laugh that I felt in my chest. The bonfire was already roaring when we arrived, flames reaching toward the darkening sky. Maybe 40 people milled around, ranch hands, families, even some teenagers running around in the background. Wade introduced me to what felt like dozens of people, his hand occasionally resting on my shoulder or the small of my back as he guided me through the crowd. I tried not to read into those touches, tried not to notice how he stayed close to me all evening, how he seemed to orient himself toward me even when talking to other people. We found a spot on a fallen log near the fire, nursing beers and watching the flames dance. "You're good with people," Wade said after a while. "I noticed that, the way you talked to everyone tonight." I shrugged, just being friendly. "No, it's more than that." He turned to look at me fully, the firelight casting shadows across his face. "You really listen when people talk, not everyone does that." "I could say the same about you," I replied, meeting his gaze. For a moment, the noise of the party seemed to fade away. It was just us. The fire and the electric tension building in the small space between us. Wade's eyes dropped to my lips just for a second, but I saw it. My breath caught. He leaned in slightly and I froze, torn between desire and fear. Was this really happening? Was I reading this right? "Wade, get over here!" Marcus's voice boomed across the clearing, shattering the moment. Wade jerked back, blinking as if coming out of a trance. He stood quickly, running a hand through his hair. "Sorry, I should." He didn't finish the sentence, just walked toward where his brother stood with a group of older ranchers. I sat there, my heart pounding, trying to process what had almost happened. Had I imagined it? The way he'd looked at me, the way he'd leaned in? No, it had been real, I was sure of it. But Wade didn't come back. For the rest of the night, he stayed on the opposite side of the fire, engaged in conversations with other people, his eyes never quite meeting mine when I looked his way. When he finally suggested we head back, the drive home was thick with uncomfortable silence. "Thanks for inviting me," I said when he pulled up to my cabin. "Yeah, no problem." His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. "Dylan, I waited, hoping he'd finish the thought, but he just shook his head. "See you Monday." I got out of the truck feeling confused and a little hurt, watching his taillights disappear into the darkness. The weekend passed in uncomfortable isolation. I saw Wade from a distance on Sunday. He was working with the horses in the far pasture, but he didn't come by the stables where I was inventorying supplies. By Monday morning, I'd almost convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing, that my stupid crush had made me see something that wasn't there. But when I walked into the stable Monday at dawn, Wade was already there, and the expression on his face told me I hadn't imagined anything. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. My stomach dropped. "Okay." He looked around the stable as if checking we were alone, then moved to the tack room, motioning for me to follow. Once inside the small space, surrounded by saddles and bridles and the smell of leather, he turned to face me. The morning light filtering through the window illuminated the conflict in his eyes. "Saturday night," he began, then stopped, struggling with the words. I shouldn't have." "Wait, it's okay." "No, it's not okay." His voice was rough, strained. "You work for me, you work for my family, and I can't." "Can't what?" I asked quietly, my heart racing. He looked at me then with such raw emotion that it nearly knocked the breath from my lungs. "I can't stop thinking about you, I can't. I don't know what's happening to me, Dylan. I've never felt like this about anyone, and I don't know what to do with it." The confession hung in the air between us. I knew I should be careful, should think this through, but all I could focus on was the vulnerability in his expression, the way his chest rose and fell with quick breaths. "What do you feel?" I whispered. Wade stepped closer and the tack room suddenly felt impossibly small. "I feel like I'm losing my mind. Every time you smile at me, every time we talk, every time you're near me, I just want to." He reached out, his hand hovering near my face but not quite touching. "But I can't. This ranch, my family, my responsibilities, I can't risk all of that for something I don't even understand." "Maybe you don't have to understand it," I said, my voice barely audible. "Maybe you just have to feel it." His hand finally made contact, fingers brushing my cheek with a gentleness that contradicted his size and strength. The touch sent electricity through my entire body. Wade's eyes searched mine, looking for something: permission, confirmation, courage. Then he kissed me. It was soft, tentative, questioning, everything a first kiss should be. His lips were warm and slightly chapped from the dry autumn air, and the taste of him was better than anything my imagination had conjured. I responded without thinking, my hand coming up to rest on his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath my palm. The kiss deepened, became more sure of itself. Wade's other hand slid to my waist, pulling me closer, and I melted into him, into this impossible, perfect moment. Every nerve in my body felt alive, hyper-aware of everywhere we touched, his hand on my face, his chest against mine, his lips moving with increasing confidence. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Wade rested his forehead against mine. "God," he breathed. "Dylan, I..." The tack room door swung open with a bang that made us jump apart like we'd been shocked. We both spun toward the entrance and my blood ran cold. Marcus stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable but his presence filling the small space with immediate tension. His dark eyes moved from Wade to me and back again, taking in our flushed faces, our obvious proximity, the guilt written all over both of us. "Marcus," Wade started, but his brother held up a hand. "Wade, my office, now." Marcus's voice was flat, controlled in a way that was somehow more frightening than if he'd yelled. His eyes flicked to me briefly. "You get to work, Carter." He turned and walked away, leaving the door open behind him. Wade looked at me and I saw fear flicker across his face, not of physical harm, but of something deeper, more complicated. Family, legacy, responsibility. "I have to," he began. "I know, go." He hesitated for just a moment, his hand reaching out as if to touch me again, but then he let it fall and walked out after his brother. I stood alone in the tack room, my lips still tingling from the kiss, my heart sinking with the certainty that everything had just gotten infinitely more complicated. I threw myself into work, trying not to think about what was happening in Marcus's office, what Marcus might be saying to Wade, what this all meant for my job, for us, for the fragile thing that had just begun to bloom between us. I mucked stalls with aggressive efficiency, fed the horses, checked water troughs, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind occupied. An hour passed, then another. Wade didn't return to the stable. It was nearly noon when I heard footsteps and looked up to see not Wade but Marcus approaching. I straightened, trying to appear calm, professional, like I hadn't been kissing his brother in the tack room just hours ago. Marcus stopped a few feet away, his massive frame somehow both intimidating and weary. He studied me for a long moment before speaking. "How long?" he asked simply. I considered lying but decided honesty was the only option. "Nothing happened until this morning, but I've had feelings for a while." He nodded slowly as if this confirmed something he'd suspected, and Wade. You'll have to ask him. I did. Marcus leaned against the stable wall, crossing his arms. He's confused, scared, and currently locked in his room like a teenager who got caught sneaking out. Despite everything, I almost smiled at the image. What did you say to him? I told him the truth, that this complicates things, that people around here aren't always understanding about this kind of thing, that our family has a reputation to maintain. He paused, his expression softening just slightly. I also told him that I'd rather have an honest brother than one who lives a lie. I looked at him in surprise. So you're okay with this? I didn't say that, Marcus's jaw tightened. I said I'd rather have my brother be happy and honest. That doesn't mean this isn't complicated as hell, or that it won't cause problems, or that I'm thrilled about my employee and my brother getting involved. I can quit, I offered, though the words hurt to say, if that would make things easier. And break my brother's heart before this even has a chance to be something? Marcus shook his head. No, but we need ground rules, no public displays on ranch property. You work hard and earn your keep, no favoritism, no special treatment. And Wade needs to figure out what he wants, who he is, without pressure from you or me or anyone else. Can you handle that? Yes, sir. Stop calling me sir, I'm not that old. The corner of his mouth twitched in what might have been the beginning of a smile. Look, Dylan, I'm not going to pretend I understand all of this. He's never shown interest in anyone, man or woman, in all the years I've known him. Now suddenly you show up and he's completely turned inside out. I never meant to. I know, these things happen. Marcus straightened, preparing to leave. Just be patient with him, okay? This is all new territory and Wade's never been good with change. He started to walk away, then paused and turned back. And Dylan, he might not say it, but he's terrified right now of what this means, what people will think, what happens next. So when he pulls away or gets distant or does something stupid, because he will remember that, fear makes people do stupid things. With that cryptic warning, Marcus left me alone with my thoughts and my work, and the ghost of Wade's kiss still lingering on my lips. Wade didn't come back to the stables that day, or the next, or the day after that. For 3 days I worked alone, falling back into the routines Wade had taught me, feeling his absence like a physical weight. I saw him from a distance occasionally, working with Jesse in the far fields, helping Marcus with paperwork in the main house, but he never came near the stables. On the 4th day, I'd had enough. After finishing my evening chores, I walked up to the main house and knocked on the door. Marcus answered, took one look at my determined expression, and simply pointed upstairs. Second door on the right, and Dylan, don't let him hide. I climbed the stairs, my heart pounding with each step. The house was beautifully maintained, all wood and stone and masculine comfort. Photos lined the walls, the 3 brothers at various ages, their parents, the ranch through the years. I paused at one picture, Wade, maybe 16 years old, sitting on a horse with a genuine smile on his face, looking completely at peace. The second door on the right was partially open. I knocked softly. Go away, Marcus, Wade's voice called out. Not Marcus, I said, pushing the door open. Wade was sitting on his bed, laptop open but clearly not working, wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't been sleeping. When he saw me, several emotions crossed his face in rapid succession: surprise, longing, fear, guilt. Dylan, you shouldn't be here. Probably not, I agreed, stepping into the room and closing the door behind me. But I'm tired of you avoiding me. I'm not avoiding. You've been hiding for 4 days, Wade, that's avoiding. He closed the laptop and ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd come to recognize as his tell when he was stressed. I don't know what to say to you. I sat down on the edge of his bed, maintaining some distance but not too much. You could start with the truth. Do you regret kissing me? No, the answer came immediately, firmly. God, no, I replay that moment 1,000 times a day. I don't know how to do this, Dylan. I don't know how to be this person. What person? This person who wants, who feels, he struggled with the words. I'm 28 years old and I've never felt this way about anyone. I've never wanted to kiss someone so badly it keeps me up at night. I've never looked at someone and felt like I'd do anything just to see them smile, and it terrifies me because I don't know what it means. Does it have to mean anything beyond what it is? I asked gently. 2 people who care about each other, who are attracted to each other. But I'm not. I've never thought of myself as. Gay, I supplied. You don't have to label it, Wade. You don't have to figure everything out right now. He looked at me with such vulnerability that it broke something open in my chest. What if I screw this up? What if I can't be what you need? I moved closer, taking his hand in mine. His fingers were calloused from years of ranch work, warm and strong. What if you stop worrying about what you should be and just let yourself feel what you feel? Wade's eyes searched mine, and I saw the moment he made a decision. He leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away, and kissed me again. This kiss was different from the first, less desperate, more deliberate, a conscious choice rather than an impulse. When we broke apart, Wade didn't pull away entirely. He rested his hand against my cheek, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. "I want to try," he whispered. "I want to figure this out with you, but I need time. I need to do this at my own pace." "Okay," I agreed simply. "We'll go at your pace." Relief flooded his expression. "Marcus said you offered to quit." "I did, if that's what you needed." "It's not." His hand moved to the back of my neck, pulling me closer until our foreheads touched. "I need you here. Is that selfish?" "No, it's honest." We stayed like that for a long moment, breathing the same air, existing in this small bubble of possibility. Eventually, I pulled back, knowing that if I stayed much longer, I wouldn't want to leave. "I should go. You need to sleep. You look exhausted." Wade caught my hand as I stood. "Tomorrow, we'll talk more tomorrow." "Tomorrow," I confirmed. Walking back to my cabin that night, I felt lighter than I had in days. It wouldn't be easy, I knew that. Wade had a lot to work through, and we'd have to navigate the complexities of our situation carefully. But for the first time, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this could actually work. The next few weeks fell into a new rhythm. Wade returned to working in the stables with me, and while things were slightly awkward at first, we gradually found our way back to the easy companionship we'd shared before, now layered with an awareness that hummed beneath every interaction. We were careful on ranch property, mindful of Marcus's rules and the prying eyes of other workers. But in the evenings, after everyone else had gone home, Wade would sometimes come to my cabin. We'd sit on my small porch talking for hours, watching the stars emerge over the mountains. Sometimes he'd reach for my hand, threading our fingers together in the darkness. Sometimes he'd kiss me, soft and sweet, before pulling away with a mixture of desire and restraint. "I'm not ready for more," he'd said one night after a kiss that had left us both breathing hard. "Not yet." "I know it's okay." "Is it though?" He'd looked at me with concern. "I feel like I'm stringing you along." "You're not. We're figuring things out together. Remember, there's no timeline." But the physical tension between us was building, becoming harder to ignore. Every touch lingered a little longer, every kiss deepened a little more before we pulled apart. I could see the want in Wade's eyes, matched by my own, but I respected his boundaries, even when it left me aching with unfulfilled desire. One Friday night in October, Wade showed up at my cabin with a six-pack of beer and a guitar. I'd mentioned once that I used to play, and he'd surprised me by bringing one of his father's old instruments. "Play something," he said, handing it to me. "I'm rusty," I warned, but I took the guitar, tuning it by ear. My fingers found the chords to an old folk song, something sad and sweet about longing and distance. Wade watched me with an expression I couldn't quite read, and when I finished, he set down his beer and crossed the small space between us. "I'm falling in love with you," he said quietly. "I don't know what to do about it, but I needed you to know." My heart stuttered in my chest. The guitar nearly slipped from my hands as I set it aside carefully. "Wade, you don't have to say it back. I needed to be honest." "I'm already in love with you," I confessed. "I have been for weeks." The kiss that followed was different from all the others, deeper, more urgent, filled with all the emotion we'd been holding back. Wade's hands tangled in my hair, and I pulled him closer, needing to feel every point of contact between us. We stumbled from the porch into the cabin, mouths never breaking apart, hands exploring with increasing boldness. We made it to the bed, Wade's weight pressing me into the mattress, and for a moment I thought this might be it, that we might finally cross this threshold we'd been dancing around. But then Wade pulled back, breathing hard, his eyes dark with desire but also uncertainty. "I want to," he said, his voice rough. "God, I want to, but..." "But you're not ready," I finished, trying to hide my disappointment. "It's okay. It's not fair to you." I cupped his face in my hands, making him look at me. "Wade, you're worth waiting for. However long it takes, you're worth it." He kissed me again, softer this time, then rolled off me, lying on his back beside me on the narrow bed. We stayed like that for hours, just holding each other, talking quietly about everything and nothing, until Wade eventually fell asleep with his head on my chest. I lay awake, listening to him breathe, feeling the weight of him against me, and thought about how sometimes the most intimate moments have nothing to do with sex. How sometimes just being trusted with someone's vulnerability is more meaningful than any physical act. But the next morning, everything changed again. I woke to find Wade already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed with his back to me, tension radiating from every line of his body. "What's wrong?" I asked, sitting up. "I shouldn't have stayed," he said without turning around. "People will notice, they'll talk." "Wade, it's barely dawn, no one's even awake yet." "You don't understand." He stood, pulling on his boots. "This place, these people, they're not like you're used to in the city. If they find out about us, about me, it could destroy everything my family has built here." "So what are you saying?" He finally looked at me and I saw fear in his eyes again, the same fear that had kept him locked in his room for days. "I'm saying we need to be more careful, we need to slow down. We've been going slow, Wade, we've been doing everything at your pace." "I know, and I'm grateful, but," he stopped, frustrated with himself or the situation or both. "Maybe Marcus was right, maybe this is too complicated." "Don't do this," I said, getting out of bed, moving toward him. "Don't let fear make you push me away." "I'm not." "You are. Every time we get close, every time you let yourself feel something real, you panic and pull back. I understand this is new and scary, but you can't keep doing this." Wade's jaw tightened. "Maybe I can't do this at all." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You don't mean that." "Don't I?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Maybe I've been fooling myself, thinking I could be something I'm not. Maybe it would be better for everyone if we just went back to how things were before. Before you kissed me, before you told me you were falling in love with me, that was less than 12 hours ago, Wade." "I know, and I shouldn't have said it. I shouldn't have let things go this far." Anger flared hot in my chest, mixing with hurt and disappointment. "So what, you're just going to pretend nothing happened, go back to being my boss and nothing more?" "It would be easier." "Easier isn't the same as right." Wade finally looked at me and I saw his own pain reflected back at me, but also determination, the stubbornness that came from years of shouldering responsibility for his family's legacy. "I need some space, Dylan, I need to think." "Fine, take your space." I moved to the door, opening it. "But don't expect me to wait around indefinitely while you figure out whether I'm worth the risk." He flinched at that but didn't argue. He walked past me, pausing briefly in the doorway as if he wanted to say something more, but then just kept going. I watched him walk away in the gray dawn light, feeling something crack in my chest. The next 2 weeks were hell. Wade avoided me completely, assigning me to work with Jesse in the far pastures while he stayed in the stables or worked in his office. When we did cross paths, he was professionally cordial but emotionally distant, like we'd never been anything more than employer and employee. I threw myself into work, channeling my hurt and anger into physical labor. Jesse, to his credit, didn't ask questions, though I could tell he'd noticed the tension. Marcus watched from a distance with an expression that might have been sympathy or disapproval, I couldn't tell which. At night, alone in my cabin, I replayed every moment we'd shared, trying to pinpoint where it had all gone wrong. Had I pushed too hard, expected too much, or was Wade simply not capable of being honest about who he was, what he wanted? I considered quitting, leaving the ranch and this complicated situation behind, but something stubborn in me refused. I'd meant what I said, Wade was worth the wait, worth the risk, but I couldn't be the only one fighting for this. Things came to a head on a Saturday afternoon. I was in town picking up supplies for the ranch when I saw Wade's truck parked outside the local diner. Through the window, I could see him sitting in a booth with a woman. She was pretty, blonde, clearly from one of the neighboring ranches based on her clothes. They were talking, and she was smiling at him in a way that made my stomach twist with jealousy. Wade wasn't smiling back, but he wasn't leaving either. I almost walked in, almost confronted him right there, but pride and pain stopped me. Instead, I loaded the supplies into my truck and drove back to the ranch, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. I was unloading feed bags in the storage barn when Wade found me an hour later. "Dylan, we need to talk." "I'm busy." I didn't look at him, just kept hauling 50-pound bags off the truck. That was Melissa Henderson. Her father owns the ranch to the south. "I don't care who she is. She wants to go out with me." Her father and Marcus have been talking about possibly combining our breeding programs, and she thought. I dropped the bag I was holding and spun to face him. I said, "I don't care." "You're angry." "I'm angry," I laughed, bitter and sharp. "Yeah, Wade, I'm angry. I'm angry that you told me you were falling in love with me and then ghosted me for 2 weeks. I'm angry that you're so terrified of what people might think that you'd rather pretend to be someone you're not. I'm angry that you're apparently going on dates with women while I'm over here trying to respect the space you asked for." "I'm not going on a date with her." I turned her down. "Great, good for you. Is that supposed to make me feel better?" Wade's jaw clenched. "What do you want from me, Dylan?" "I want you to be honest. With me, with yourself, with everyone. I want you to stop running every time things get real. I want you to decide whether I'm worth fighting for, because I can't keep doing this dance where you pull me close and then push me away." "It's not that simple." "It is that simple," my voice echoed in the barn. "Either you want to be with me or you don't. Either you're brave enough to live your truth or you're not, but you don't get to keep me on the hook while you figure it out." Silence fell between us, heavy and charged. Wade's chest rose and fell with rapid breaths, his hands clenched at his sides. For a moment I thought he might walk away again, but then something shifted in his expression, something like resolution. "You're right," he said quietly. I blinked, surprised. "What?" "You're right, I've been a coward. I've been so afraid of what other people might think, of disappointing my family, of losing the ranch, that I've been hurting you instead. And that's not fair." He stepped closer and I saw the fear still there in his eyes, but also determination. "I don't know how to do this, Dylan. I don't know how to be openly this, in a place where everyone knows my name, knows my family. But I know I don't want to lose you. I know that these past 2 weeks have been the worst of my life. I know that I'd rather face whatever comes than spend another day pretending I don't feel what I feel." My anger started to drain away, replaced by cautious hope. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm terrified, but I'm more terrified of living without you." He reached out, taking my hand in his. "I'm saying I want to try, really try, not hiding, not making excuses, just us. People will talk, Wade, your family, the ranch hands, the whole town. Let them talk." His thumb brushed across my knuckles. "You asked if you were worth fighting for. You are. You're worth all of it." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to so badly, but I'd been hurt too many times already. "How do I know you won't change your mind again, that you won't panic and push me away the next time things get hard?" "You don't," he admitted. "I can't promise I won't be scared or that this will be easy, but I can promise I'll fight through the fear instead of letting it win. I can promise I'll choose you every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." He pulled me closer, his free hand coming up to cup my face. "I love you, Dylan. I'm saying it clearly in the daylight without any qualifications. I love you and I want to be with you, and I'm done hiding." The last of my resistance crumbled. I closed the distance between us and kissed him, pouring every ounce of frustration, longing, and love into it. Wade responded with equal intensity, his arms wrapping around me, holding me like he never wanted to let go. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Wade rested his forehead against mine. "Take me home," he whispered. "To your cabin. I'm ready. I want all of you." My heart stuttered. "Are you sure?" I've never been more sure of anything. We walked to my cabin hand in hand in broad daylight, not caring who might see. Inside, with the curtains drawn and the world shut out, we came together finally, completely, without fear or hesitation. Every touch was an act of trust, every kiss a promise. Wade was gentle and nervous and perfect, and when we lay tangled together afterward, both of us trembling and overwhelmed, I knew that everything we'd been through had led to this moment. "I love you," Wade murmured against my skin. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "I love you too," I whispered back, "and I never will." We stayed in that cabin for hours, existing in our own private world, knowing that eventually we'd have to face reality, but content to postpone it just a little longer. Reality came knocking the next morning in the form of Marcus. Wade and I were having breakfast in my cabin, pancakes that Wade had made surprisingly well, when heavy footsteps approached the door. We exchanged a glance and Wade squeezed my hand before getting up to answer it. Marcus stood on the porch, arms crossed, expression unreadable. His eyes moved from Wade to me and back again, taking in Wade's rumpled clothes the fact that he'd clearly spent the night. "Morning," Marcus said evenly. "Morning," Wade replied, his voice steady despite the tension. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, then he sighed, some of the sternness leaving his posture. "Mom and Dad would want you to be happy," he said quietly. "They wouldn't care about anything else." Wade's eyes widened. "Marcus. Sunday dinner, both of you, 6 o'clock, Jesse already knows." Marcus turned to leave, then paused. "And Wade, next time you disappear overnight, at least text so I know you're alive." He walked away, leaving Wade standing in the doorway looking stunned. I came up behind him, wrapping my arms around his waist and resting my chin on his shoulder. "Your brother just invited me to family dinner," I said, still processing. "He did." Wade turned in my arms, a smile spreading across his face, a real, genuine smile full of relief and happiness. "He really did." Sunday dinner was surprisingly normal. Jesse greeted us with a knowing grin and a comment about "finally," while Marcus played the role of stern older brother but with noticeably less edge than before. They told stories about growing up on the ranch, about their parents, about the history of the place. They included me naturally in the conversation, asking about my plans, my thoughts on some ranch improvements. It felt like acceptance, like family. Over the following weeks, Wade and I navigated our new reality. We were careful but not secretive, holding hands when we walked around the property, stealing kisses when we thought no one was looking, though Jesse seemed to have a knack for walking in at inopportune moments. Some of the ranch hands figured it out, and while there were a few awkward moments and one guy who requested a transfer to another ranch, most people just shrugged and went about their business. The neighboring ranchers were more challenging. There were stares when we went into town together, whispers behind hands, a few outright hostile comments. Wade handled it with a quiet dignity that made me fall even more in love with him, refusing to be ashamed of who we were. "Let them talk," he'd say, his hand finding mine. "They'll get bored eventually." One Saturday in November, as the first snow began to fall, Wade and I were working in the stable when he suddenly set down his pitchfork and turned to me. "Move in with me," he said, "to the main house. I want to wake up next to you every morning." "Wade, that's your brother's." "Already approved it." Marcus said it was about time since I've barely slept in my own room since we got together anyway. I laughed, warmth flooding my chest. "Then yes, absolutely yes." We sealed it with a kiss, right there in the stable, not caring if anyone saw. Moving into the main house felt like the final piece clicking into place. We converted Wade's bedroom into our space, blending our belongings, creating a home within a home. I had a family dinner table to sit at every night, brothers who teased us mercilessly but also had our backs, and a partner who loved me openly and honestly. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, still people who didn't approve, still moments when Wade's old fears would resurface. But we faced them together, and that made all the difference. One evening in December, as we sat on the porch of the main house watching the sun set over the mountains, Wade pulled me close. "You know what I realized," he said softly. "What's that?" "I spent so much time being afraid of losing everything if people knew the truth about me. But the truth is, I would have lost everything, everything that really mattered, if I'd let fear keep me from loving you." I kissed him, soft and sweet, as the sky turned shades of orange and pink. "I'm glad you didn't." "Me too," he smiled against my lips. "Me too." In the distance, I could hear Marcus and Jesse arguing good-naturedly about something, probably whose turn it was to cook dinner. Snow crunched under our boots as we shifted closer together against the cold. Inside, the house was warm and lit, waiting for us. This was home, not just the ranch, not just the mountains or the work or the land, but this. Wade beside me, his brothers accepting us, a life we were building together brick by brick, moment by moment. And that's when Marcus's words from that first morning in the stable came back to me. "He was the gentle one, kid. You sure you can handle what comes next?" I looked at Wade, strong, brave, vulnerable, honest Wade, and smiled. "Yeah," I whispered, though Marcus wasn't there to hear. "I can handle it. I can handle all of it." Because love, real love, isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone worth fighting for, worth being brave for, worth building a life with. And Wade Holloway was worth everything. Epilogue 6 months later. The spring branding season was in full swing and the ranch was busier than I'd ever seen it. Wade and I worked side by side, covered in dust and sweat, orchestrating the organized chaos of processing over 200 head of cattle. Marcus and Jesse worked nearby, all of us moving with the synchronized efficiency that came from months of working together. When we finally finished for the day, exhausted and filthy, Wade pulled me aside as we were washing up. "There's something I want to show you," he said, that soft smile playing at his lips. He led me out to the far pasture to a spot overlooking the valley where wildflowers had started to bloom. In the distance, the mountains were still capped with snow, but here, spring was definitely winning. Wade turned to face me and I noticed he was nervous, fidgeting with something in his pocket. "Dylan Carter, you came into my life when I didn't even know I was looking for anything. You challenged me, frustrated me, made me face parts of myself I'd been hiding for years." He pulled out a simple silver band, turning it in the fading light. "You made me brave, you made me honest, you made me happy." My breath caught as he took my hand. "I know we can't get married here, not legally, not yet, but I don't need a piece of paper to know you're it for me. You're my partner, my best friend, my home." He slipped the ring onto my finger. "Will you be mine, officially, completely, for as long as we both shall live?" I couldn't speak past the lump in my throat, so I just nodded, pulling him into a kiss that tasted like salt and joy and promise. "Is that a yes?" he asked when we broke apart, grinning. "That's a yes," I confirmed, laughing through tears. "Always yes." We walked back to the house hand in hand as the sun set, both of us wearing matching silver bands, ready to face whatever came next. Together. The end. Did this story touch your heart? Want to see more LGBTQ plus love stories that explore the complexity of identity, family, and choosing love over fear? Thumbs up please, like this video if Wade and Dylan's journey moved you. Bell subscribe to the channel for more emotional, slow-burn romantic stories. Speech balloon comment below. Should I tell you what happened at Wade and Dylan's commitment ceremony 6 months later? What do you think Marcus said in his speech? Let me know if you want part 2. Pushpin, what did you think of Dylan's patience with Wade? Would you have given him that many chances or would you have walked away? Share your thoughts below. I read every comment.